Yes, we do. Okay, perfect. Due to COVID-19 pandemic physical distancing measures, the committee is meeting virtually. Members of the committee, executive management, and the clerk are participating via video conferencing, and senior leadership team, they're not visible right now, but can answer questions if there's items related on the agenda. We have one open delegation being provided tonight, and that's by Noella Robert Capel concerning the future of Barrie City Camps at Tyndale Park. I'll now call upon Noella Robert Capel to provide her open delegation. Please note that in accordance with the city bylaws, you have 5 minutes to provide your comments. Do we have her online, Ms. Cook? Perfect.
I'm here. Can I be heard?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I'm going to start. The brief explanation is that Tyndale Park hosts City of Barrie day camps and has become a very popular park for Barrie residents and out-of-town visitors these past several years. This has resulted in documented overcrowding of the beach area and will impact Tyndale's ability to host city camps. The 2020 City of Barrie camps scheduled at Tyndale were canceled due to COVID-19. However, the 2021 camps are scheduled to resume, to my knowledge. And I believe the city needs to address whether priority access will be given to these camps, Barrie residents, or whether priority access will be given to out-of-town visitors, as Tyndale Beach clearly doesn't have the capacity to host all three groups. The background is that during July and August, the City of Barrie runs these camps at Tyndale Park and Chalk Road and hosts upwards of 100 kids weekly. I believe this has been ongoing for many years, and from my understanding has served the community well. Kids like it, and it provides summer jobs for Barrie students. Tyndale Park, I believe, is one of several city camp sites, but no other Barrie Beach hosts these camps to my knowledge. The problem is that Barrie's population has grown significantly since the start of using Tyndale Park for City of Barrie day camps. The south end of Barrie has grown considerably, and more condos and subdivisions are underway. As well, Barrie beaches are closer for many visitors traveling from the GTA than are Collingwood beaches. And additionally, with Innisfil and Oro and Orillia limiting its beaches to residents this summer, specifically Centennial Beach and small beaches set in remote residential areas suffered significant overcrowding issues during the week and on the weekends from early morning till 11 p.m. when a convoy of vehicles could be seen exiting Tyndale Park. As a result, this park, which has a very small beach, is overcrowded during all of the summer. So additionally, when the city runs the camps, the beach is cordoned off in half. So this limits the beach width of Tyndale Beach to 22 meters. To give context to the size of this remaining width for use by anyone else going to Tyndale other than the kids is the width of your average backyard. So imagine having 300 to 500 people safely swimming in an area the width of your backyard. This small beach does not have the capacity to host day camps, Barrie residents and out-of-town residents all looking for beach access. It seems the city wants to proceed with running city day camps there because the summer, the play structures at Tyndale were expanded, and my understanding is that it was enlarged and positioned extremely close to the beach, specifically with the city day camps in mind. So in summary, the city needs to make a decision regarding who should have priority access to Tyndale Beach during the summer months, because it clearly can't accommodate everyone. Should Tyndale Park be removed as one of the City of Barrie's day camp sites and another non-beach location secured? There are other parks in the city that could be used, as clearly beaches have become a hot commodity. Should the City of Barrie camp site be changed to a quieter beach with no parking access by out-of-town visitors like Gables, or a wider beach such as Johnson's or Centennial, where cordoning off a half or a portion will still leave a reasonable size beach? Should the city make Tyndale Park or beach for Barrie residents only to allow this beach or park used by the City of Barrie for day camps or other competitive sports leagues like the Volleyball League and its residents? I believe the city should reconsider planning for city campsite expansions, considering Barrie's anticipated population growth, and decide whether beaches are an important part of the camp experience. And if so, address the need to choose a larger Barrie beach that allows cordoning off the beach or making the beach that is currently being used for day camps for Barrie residents only. If day camps with the beach experience is not considered sustainable, then other non-beach sites should be identified. In summary, Tyndale, Barrie's narrowest beach, does not have the capacity to host City of Barrie camps, Barrie residents, and 300 to 500 out-of-town visitors daily during the summer months. And a sustainable long-term solution for day camp sites needs to be addressed and planned for as the south end of Barrie residential neighborhoods continue to grow, the city continues to grow, and visitors from out of town continue to overrun our beaches. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ms. Robert Capel. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Jim Harris, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Morales, and thank you, Ms. Robert Capel. I know we've had some conversations and met at Tyndale to discuss the challenges that happened over the summer. Maybe a question through the staff. Certainly, and Ms. Robert Capel, she made a great comment about the positive nature of these camps and how successful they are and important they are to citizens. I was just wondering, with regard to the use of Tyndale, I know that it's a popular location. If staff, maybe to you, Mr. Chair, to staff, how central is the beach to the camps that operate? I know there's a variety of camps there. There's volleyball, there's earth camps. How central is water access to the camps that we offer?
Perfect. Councillor Harris, would that be a Ms. McAlpine question or a Mr. Bell question?
Mr. Bell, sir.
Perfect. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Bell.
Hello, and thank you through you, Councillor Morales, to Councillor Harris. Yeah, the camp certainly does operate out of Tyndale, and as you said, it's a very popular opportunity for our camp kids within the city of Barrie. The water access is certainly one of the draws for that camp. They do swimming there on a regular and ongoing basis. And as the delegate did identify, is that they would cordon off part of the beach for a swimming program. So if we took that opportunity to just park without water, then we would certainly have a decrease in our numbers in our camps.
Right. Thank you. Just maybe a follow up with the water being part of the camps, and I understand summer it's part of cooling off and having fun. And Miss Robert Capel made some valid concerns about safety. I have an assumption, but I need to check this. Obviously, would it appreciably be safer when the camps are there, given that we have people there who are lifeguard or water safety trained during the time the camps are actually on? So it actually would increase the safety of that beach site during those times.
Yes, and through Councillor Morales and to Jim Harris, you're absolutely correct. Our camp counselors are trained in water safety, and that's why we cordon off the section of the beach for the swimmers so that we can contain them and keep a better eye on our swimmers and our camp participants. So yes, our staff are trained to deal with water issues that do arise on those sites.
Okay, and maybe just curious, obviously 2020 was an anomaly, the outlier from all respects to usage of our beaches, and certainly Southerners found our wonderful beaches and the more private and quiet ones like Minette's and Tyndale. Going back to 2019 and maybe 2018, if that's fair with your experience, were you seeing a negligible impact on the camps based on outside usage, or was the camp able to really operate harmoniously with both the residents that use it, families coming but not in camps, and residents, even if we probably didn't even know back then how many were or weren't residents, because we weren't that focused on who was from Barrie and who wasn't from Barrie pre-COVID. But was there a crush of conflicting usage of the camp and over volume during that? Camp is basically 8:30 to 4:30 Monday to Friday. Was that a pressure point in 2018-19?
No, I think that ultimately this past season, there's obviously an interest in finding locations. And I think there was a crush for sure of people from the South trying to find opportunities to be by the water and beachfront. And when this great park becomes available and they'll become aware of that opportunity, then they certainly flood that area. In 2019 and 18, it obviously wasn't as popular. It certainly was a busy beach, and there's a lot of people utilizing that area, but it was a little harmonious, as you would say, Councillor. It was a certain situation where we are there and working with the people in those spaces, and it did work quite well.
Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted. I know, I wonder if it's basically 8:30 to 4:30, Monday to Friday, when camps ran, it seemed to fit with the general usage that people used the park for during those times. It wasn't there weren't conflict points like there were this year.
No, there wasn't any reported conflicts per se.
Okay, in our maybe you can give us a bit of, I know it was reported around 100 kids. I did see some numbers, and thank you for providing to me, that we're talking about 75 kids at a day camp, roughly would be the number there in a week.
Yes, through Councillor Morales and to the Councillor Harris. Yes, the numbers, we have a number of different camps that run out of that area, and some of them locate in that space and then move on. So the bike camp, for example, would locate at Tyndale, and then they would go out onto the trails and off they would go. So it's there are 75 is the average number of people within our day camp, but they aren't all at the camp site or at Tyndale for the whole day. They do move around. As the delegate also identified that we do go to Dock Road on occasion and use that area as well. But the infrastructure at Tyndale is really strong and very well used for our camp groups. It has pavilions and washrooms and those types of things for that, where the Gables doesn't not have that opportunity. So that's why we use Tyndale as the main area for our camp program. And then we do move out and other spaces as well, as well. We have those camps moving and operating.
Great. Thank you. And maybe one last question, Mr. Chair, through you to, maybe it's, I'm not sure if it's Ms. Cook or Ms. McAlpine, maybe, but kind of refreshing our memory about our ability or lack thereof to keep those who aren't residents in Barrie from our public beaches.
Through Councillor Morales, as chair of the committee, to you, Councillor Harris. While certainly the municipality can indicate that parking is intended for residents only, should a municipality prohibit an individual from attending, there's really no grounds to support that if there was ever a challenge in the courts. So that's been the approach that the municipality has utilized, is that it doesn't have the authority to prohibit public use of a public beach. Municipalities have attempted that and have had some success in terms of a communications technique, but they haven't actually tried to force it other than in terms of parking arrangements.
Thank you, Ms. McCock, and thank you for the presentation, Ms. Robert Capella. I know it's an issue, and the usage hopefully will return to a more normal 2021 with all good intentions and fingers crossed. Anyway, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Jim Harris. Are there any other questions of members of the committee? Deputy Mayor Ward, go ahead.
Thanks, and I'll apologize in advance. We're getting a electrical panel replaced in the house today, and they're still banging away down there. They're running into a few problems, so if you hear any noise, that's what it is. I just want to ask Mrs. Robert Capella, just to make clarification, is your problem with only the beach area or the entire park in terms of overcrowding? She's still with us?
It's hard to separate one from the other, Mr. Ward. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So yeah, are you remaining concerned about the problem with accessing the beach, or just the park in general being overcrowded? I know they're the same, but they're, which is your greatest concern?
Well, the greatest concern is that you can't separate from one the other, exactly. So the problem is we do have a fairly large area, right? And we do have a lot of people using the park, but we're not able to say, you only have 100 people that can use the beach.
Right, and I've got to admit, I've never been down there when a park is, when one of the programs are going on in the summer. So I don't From what you said, though, there's actually a division on the beach, a physical barrier that half the beach is used for parks and half of it's used for the public. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And what's I mean, it's either for you or for Mr. Bell. What's the division? Is it 50-50 or is it?
50-50.
It's 50-50.
It's a 44-meter beach. It's cut in half to 22 meters, the size of a backyard after it's done it being used by the city of Barrie.
Okay. I guess just one question I'd have for Mr. Bell. Is there a chance that could be adjusted at all? Do we need 50% for the parks programming? And I guess I'm curious how it's monitored. Is there somebody standing there telling people they can't go on that side?
Mr. Bell?
Through the chair and to Councillor Ward, yeah, there are camp counselors there, and so they do control the access to that space. Whether it's a 50-50 split or a 30-70 split, it certainly depends on the numbers of the camp and how many kids are in the camp for that period of time, and that's where the space would need to be identified. We could certainly look at shrinking that space if it's possible, but you know, I think that it is usually for a short period of time. It's not for the whole day either, so it's something that we do when we are looking for the swim program. And
one last question is: do you know where the kids come from that come to that camp? Are they from all over the city, or they tend to be from one area?
Through the chair to Councillor Ward, we haven't done the statistical analysis to find out where they're coming from, but we do know that 94% of the camp attendants are from the city of Barrie.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward. Any other questions from members of committee? Seeing none, Ms. Robert Capel, thank you for your comments and your presentation. I think you really highlighted a couple things. As a city, we're growing, period. So we need to look at capacity of our beaches and our programming and throw into that the COVID reality, which is more short term. I trust that Mr. Bell and the rest of the department are consistently looking at physical distancing rules, provincial, and how that's going to affect programming for next year. So thank you for the presentation. You're welcome, I believe, to stay for the rest of the meeting. Otherwise, again, your comments have been noted by members of committee and they will be in the minutes for council as well. So thank you. There's no presentations on the agenda. There's also no standing items or committee updates. So we're going to referred items, number 4. There's one referred item on the agenda, and that item was referred by General Committee on March 9th, 2020, concerning the memo from our city clerk, Ms. Cook, dated March 9th, 2020, regarding a response to motion 19-G-218 and 19-G-255, the noise bylaw enforcement. So can a member of, do we have to put it on the floor, Ms. Cook, or is that just as printed because it's a referred item?
Councilor Morales, we do not have to put it on the floor. It's just a memo. Members of committee can ask questions to it, or we can just receive it for information.
Perfect. So doesn't have to, do any members of committee have any questions or anything from the referral? Deputy Mayor Ward, go ahead.
Thanks. And there's several things covered in the memo, but my major concern, and the part that I put on originally quite a while ago, was to deal with the noise from motorcycles and cars, vehicle noise, which I get complaints about. And I'm happy to say I've actually had people contact me last summer to say thank you, because the city police did crack down on noisy vehicles for at least 1 or 2 blitzes. I'm not sure, maybe Councillor Thompson knows a bit more about what they did last summer. Maybe he can speak to it, because it did help. And I wanted to find out what the plans are going forward and what was done this year.
Through you, Chair, to Deputy Mayor Ward. I think there was one done, my dates might be off, but I think late July, early August. And there was quite a few infractions and fines. And I think that's going to be something on an ongoing basis. It's normally in the better weather. So, but it is something that they're looking at as a continuation.
Okay, thank you. And I guess another question for staff is, I know from other municipalities, many places, Oakville and Burlington and I think Hamilton, where they actually go out and they work with the bylaw enforcement officers, and the police go out on 2 or 3 days for a blitz. They stop vehicles, they monitor them. They actually have a bylaw that says you can't have more than 92 decibels at 50 centimeters, or they actually have a specific bylaw, and they crack down on them. Is there anything like that in the city of Barrie? Can we Have we ever looked at working with the police to do a blitz like that? A joint venture between bylaw and the police.
Ms. McAlpine? I saw your screen jump in. Was that lucky timing, or do you have an answer to that?
It's merely lucky timing. I'm sure the clerk would be happy to respond. And if there's anything else that she wants me to fill in, I can certainly jump in at that point.
Perfect. Ms. Cook?
Through you, Chair Morales, to Deputy Mayor Ward. That's something that we currently have not explored with the Barrie Police Service. We can certainly reach out to them and see if it's something that we can explore for the summer of 2021. And we can certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's worth exploring, see what other municipalities are doing. There are many that are doing it, and see whether first of all, there's two parts to it. I guess one is to investigate whether our noise bylaw needs updating with respect to noisy vehicles. And secondly, whether there's the opportunity to implement a program like that in conjunction with the Barrie Police. And I guess the third part of the motion would be to encourage Barrie Police to conduct further blitzes next year, no matter what, because I think it was very effective and very well received. I mean, I do get a lot of complaints. I mean, we saw in the staff report, I think more than 1,000 noise complaints Barrie Police received last year. Maybe it was 2019, I can't remember which. And most of those had to do with noisy vehicles. And it's really frustrating because I know I get complaints from somebody say, a noisy vehicle goes by, but there's nothing you can do. It's gone by. The resident's frustrated because the vehicle's gone, and there's no use even calling the police because they have no way of tracking down what vehicle went by them 20 minutes ago. So I think the only way to do it is to have a regular blitz so that people with noisy vehicles get to realize, okay, I'm going to get caught in Barrie and get a fine of $115 or a couple $100, whatever the fine is. So there's three things I'm looking for. One is to review the bylaw. Secondly, to see opportunities for working with city police. And three, to encourage Barrie Police to next summer to keep up their blitz on noisy vehicles.
Deputy Mayor Ward, was that the idea of a motion, or was that kind of a motion that you were kind of putting on the floor?
I guess that is a motion I'd be putting on the floor now if I could.
Okay, perfect.
To address those three things.
See the city clerk indicating. Okay, perfect. So do we have something to work with, Ms. Cook? Did you capture Deputy Mayor Ward's comments?
And report back to, on the first two items, report back to.
Okay, because the third one is the ask. Okay, so the first two are back to finance. The third one is asking Barrie Police. Okay, so as verbalized, do members of the committee have any questions to Deputy Mayor Ward on the motion? Ms. Cook, does the Deputy Mayor need a seconder on his first motion?
No, but I'm thinking Ms. McAlpine might want to comment. She has her microphone on.
Perfect. Ms. McAlpine, and I'll go over to you, Councillor Harvey, after.
I believe Councillor Harvey may be wishing to declare an interest in the matter. I just wanted to note from our past research in discussions with other municipalities and their municipal law enforcement, they indicated that they accompanied their police service because, as noted in the memo, they are unable to pull over a vehicle. While it's termed a joint blitz, any actual enforcement under the Highway Traffic Act of the pulling the vehicle over or the mufflers is actually by police. So the municipal law enforcement officers are present, but they're not able to actually pull over a vehicle. I would suggest that it's a joint blitz in name, and certainly that was a comment from the other municipal enforcement agencies.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. McAlpine. Deputy Mayor Ward.
Yeah, and that's the way I've read it is that the noise machinery, the machines are municipal, and the bylaw officers have the machines with them, so they're pulled over by the police. The test is done by the municipal law enforcement, and they're the ones that issue the. I'm not sure who issues the tickets, but that's the municipal responsibility is because they have machineries. I don't know if we have machines, but
we do have the equipment to monitor it, but the police are also able to address it if it's a modified muffler under the Highway Traffic Act. So it's not something that necessarily requires the noise bylaw or the municipal law enforcement officer, because if it is a modified muffler, it can be addressed. The challenge becomes with some motorcycles, it isn't a modified muffler, it is factory installed that way.
Mhm.
That was perfect. Thank you, Mr. McAlpine, Deputy Mayor Ward. Councillor Harvey, go ahead. You'd like to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what the motion was, just to ensure that there was no budgetary piece involved with it, because obviously then I would have to declare if there was any budgetary.
Deputy Mayor Ward, if you can.
I think there's three parts of the motion. One is to have staff investigate whether our current bylaws are adequate for enforcing noisy vehicles. The second part would be to investigate joint operations with bylaw enforcement officers and the police, as are done in other municipalities. And the third one would be to, I guess, thank the Barrie Police for their crackdown last year and encourage them to continue that kind of thing in the future.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward.
So I
Councillor
don't
Harvey,
think there's any.
would that
Yeah,
trigger?
well, I just want to speak to the motion then in its three parts. The first part, when it comes to the municipal noise bylaws, I do agree with Ms. McAlpine totally that it's far more effective in dealing with these situations at a policing level through infractions of the Highway Traffic Act, opposed to trying to use a bylaw. It's just a lot more problematic. And obviously, also too, when you look at the statutory requirements for laying a charge under the Highway Traffic Act, they're actually far less than what they are when it comes to our municipal bylaws, because you don't need decibel readers and things of that sort. Another thing that many municipalities have done, I know Barrie has done it in the past too, there is a provincial partnership amongst many police agencies in and around the GTA and Central Ontario for Project Erase, which is in relation to cars that tend to drag race or even congregate in large groups. And this is one of the infractions that they highly target when it comes to that. So that could be something that I guess Councillor Thompson takes back to the Police Services Board to see if the Barrie Police are still a part of Project Erase. But I know in a quick Google search, I could see that there was stuff from 2019 available. I just didn't see anything from 2020. But I know, like when Wasaga had their problems that one weekend, Project Erase with officers from all over the province had congregated on Wasaga Beach for the weekend to assist the OPP.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Thompson, did you capture some of the feedback that you can bring back to Police Board? Okay, got it. Any other comments on the proposed motion? I've got a couple. Ms. Kungle, I see that you're on. Do you have any comments on that? I'd extend the opportunity to go to you before I make my comments.
Thank you, Chair Morales. I have no questions.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. I didn't want to jump in and interrupt at all. Thank you.
No. Hey, we appreciate the feedback. I've got a couple comments, possibly friendlies, Deputy Mayor Ward. I'll start with one I think it's easy. So you asked if there's any blitzes. I've heard and I've seen on Twitter and car groups, I forget the municipality, it is in the GTA. They do a voluntary, I don't know what it's called, but basically like they'll say, hey, do you have a car? And do you think that your muffler is maybe illegal or something like that? Come to the, I don't know, the Barrie, a rec center, or come to the police station, or come to a space. There'll be officers there. They can ask your questions. They can say, yes, it's modified, it's illegal, or you're fine. You will not be ticketed. You will not be fined. It's kind of a, voluntary come in and make sure you're compliant day. And that proves to be effective with some people. Now there is a cynicism that, cops will write down your plate and show up at your house a couple of weeks later if you haven't changed it. But I think that if the program is well communicated, well branded, and that doesn't happen, we would get a lot of voluntary buy-in to achieve maybe what you're talking about, beyond just marketing and doing a blitz on Bayfield or something, which would require more police power. Would you be open to somehow amending the one section in your motion? And again, I don't know what that kind of initiative is called, where people come in voluntarily to check in if they're compliant and they will not be ticketed. Would you be open to a friendly on that to see if the police can look at the forces in the GTA and to see if we can do it in Barrie?
Yes, I would be. I mean, I think it's always better to let somebody voluntarily modified their vehicle to avoid the problem rather than hitting them hard. So I'd be open to it. I'm curious how those would work. I'd have to.
Yeah, it's
great.
literally how it
works.
sounds. Try to track down where I saw it, but I actually saw it within the last 2 months. So I know at GTA, they're doing it. It just has that cynicism of people saying that the cop won't show up 2 weeks later waiting outside your house. Then again, hopefully
that could be part of the staff investigation into working with them to find out whether that's also possible, because maybe that's a place for bylaw as well. They could come and, if they have a machine, have a certain, day in May that they could come down to the police station and check it out to see whether it is. So sure, that could maybe just be verbal direction for staff to investigate that aspect of it.
Perfect. I see the clerk nodding. So we've captured that. And then my other one, hopefully this can be a friendly, I'm not sure though. The point about the motorcycles, I forget who brought it up earlier, is a big point. So I obviously, again, it's no secret. I drive a Mustang and I like fast cars. I don't have any modified mufflers, don't worry. But I kind of have somewhat of a knowledge of that car community. And one of the answers they give back is great. I may get a ticket or I'm kind of close to it, but what about motorcycles? And the issue is, so the logic is, if you're going to go after me, you got to go after them. But I also understand that motorcycles, a lot of them will pass that noise threshold, the acceptable one, but that's just by design. That's the way they are. That's the way they rumble. It is what it is. Would you consider friendly to either first or second section that encourages us to do this again next year, but looks into preventing Barrie Police from ticketing noise violations that can be shown, can be proven are by factory design? So basically, if you go above the noise bylaw, but you own a motorcycle and you just happen to rev too fast in an intersection, or just that's how it sounds when it's stationary, I think we're getting into that murky territory where that's really a manufacturer issue. I am not too familiar with cars, but again, there's also concerns of people that they didn't make any modifications to the muffler. They just maybe bought a performance package and maybe they come close to. Part of this motion could also be directed. We have plenty of time, and it's not that hard, to getting bylaw and Barrie Police to look at, to research manufacturers to see where their non-modified decibel readings are, and then compare that to our standard. It sounds tedious, but it's not. It wouldn't be impossible to do, because I would just hate seeing people with non-modified cars and non-modified motorcycles from falling and getting ticketed on this. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Yeah, I mean, we're not inventing this. There's already lots of municipalities that are doing this in the Toronto area. So I guess we can look to see what they're doing. I mean, if they're coming out of the manufacturer and they're 150 decibels, there's a problem. They shouldn't be on the road anyway. So, I don't think we have to worry about that. And it's not when they're revving. I think there's probably something in the bylaws, when they're standing there and what the noise decibel is. And I think around 90s, in the mid 90s, is the decibels that I've seen in other cities' bylaws. And I think that's an acceptable, that's loud. So if anybody's louder than that, I don't care whether they, got it from the manufacturer. I don't think any manufacturer, there's maybe getting it modified from the manufacturer, but I don't think there's any manufacturer that's turning out a motorcycle or car that's louder than that. I mean, Harleys are loud, but they're not that loud unless they're modified. They may be modified before the person buys it, but I don't. Anyways, we'll see what the other municipalities how they have dealt with it, but I don't think it's an excuse for them to say, oh yeah, this is the way it came from the factory. I just don't even know I think you'd have to have a bylaw that says, two things. One is if it's over a certain decibel, it's not allowed. And two, if it's modified, which I can assume they can tell if it's been modified or have no muffler at all, they can crack down on it. But I guess that's part of the report coming back. We'll see. I don't want to prejudge it and at this point and say, yeah, we're going to give an exemption to people that bought it this way from a manufacturer. I guess I'm curious to see what other municipalities are doing.
So at this stage, Deputy Mayor Ward, would you accept a friendly to your motion that says for staff to look into this with consideration for decibel readings as a result from factory standards? I basically want staff to do the research, because you said,
like I just said, just do it from the direction. Staff the direction to include that in the report back.
Okay.
I mean, I just don't think that's an excuse. If somebody's got a loud vehicle, I think it's a loud vehicle. It shouldn't be, I don't think the manufacturers, they shouldn't say that they get an exemption because of it. I mean, you just have to go downtown at night on a hot summer night and sit in Meridian Square and listen to the vehicles going by on the lakeshore. A lot of them are very, very loud. I mean, there's no doubt they've been modified somehow.
Okay. So I was just going off your comments earlier that you don't think a manufacturer would produce something, even a Harley, that beyond 90 decibels. So if that truly is the case, then there would be no harm in kind of having that into consideration.
Well, I don't think they're coming off the assembly line like that, but I'm sure there's people that are companies that are doing it before they hit the showrooms maybe. But anyways, I don't know enough about it to know, but I just, the problem is with the noise in general.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Cook, can we just capture a very I don't have to make it that specific for them to be, at least from a amendment to the motion of making factory settings like the standard bearer, but if staff can come back and give us more information on that. Has that been captured in Deputy Mayor Ward's motion?
Yes, I'll just put like staff report back, including on, and add that into it.
Decibel readings of factory settings. Okay, perfect. Any other members of committee? Councillor Harvey, go ahead.
I just wanted to touch on a few points because I think we're kind of overthinking this a little bit too much. And I personally think we have to watch, as politicians, we can't direct the police. Obviously, we can direct our own municipal law enforcement staff, but even that, in my personal opinion, is a bit of a slippery slope. We should leave law enforcement professionals alone to enforce the laws as they're presented to themselves. And when it comes to all these decibel readings, like realistically, I think we should very loosely and broadly allow staff to do their job and come back with their recommendations on this. Ultimately, you're dealing with moving motor vehicles. It's already been determined that our bylaw people cannot stop a moving motor vehicle, only the police can. And once you start getting into decibel readings and everything else, unless we plan on outfitting every police car in town with a decibel reader, it really means nothing. All it is another bylaw that's in the stack that is going to be very difficult to enforce. Even when you look at a Harley off the line, people complain about them all the time because they're just noisy. And going off the Harley website, it says off the showroom, they run around 80 decibels. Your average idling car is around 45. So we just got to be cautious where we're going with this. And I think if this is the will, that we just leave it very broadly worded to allow staff to come back with their recommendations, opposed to us kind of moving forward and trying to direct our law enforcement people on how to do their jobs. Obviously, it's an ongoing problem. It's not just Barrie, it's all over the province. And it seems like in recent years, it's become a little worse again. It was like this in the early 90s and it kind of died off, but it seems to be rearing its head again. And some of the, especially motorcycles, they're noisy off the assembly line, and especially some of these muscle cars that they've rejuvenated and building the retro cars again. Same thing, like you listen to a Hellcat, it's noisy off the assembly line. So I think we just have to be cautious where we're going with this. You're on mute.
Oh, what I said, Councillor Harvey, is I'm glad he said Hellcat and then not another muscle car that starts with the letter M. So I appreciate the comments there. Were there any comments from staff, Ms. McAlpin, Ms. Cook, anything on those comments that were said? No, Ms. Cook,
yes,
go ahead.
Yes. I just think that we should leave paragraph 1 just more general and open, as per Councillor Harvey's suggestion, because the decibel levels are for factory set cars seem to be within the levels currently in our bylaw. So I think just leaving staff a broader approach for reporting back would be better.
Okay, perfect. Does anybody have any objections to that? Any members of the committee? Councillor Jim Harris, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Morales. Yeah, I do like the idea of it being more general and letting staff come back with the recommendations. I just want to say on behalf of all the hot rodders from the 50s and that they're cringing with this concern about noise, and my father being one of them, I'm sure he's cringing at this very conversation, but I understand how it's important to some people. So we'll move on.
Thank you, Councillor Jim Harris. You see, the thing about hot rodders is it doesn't matter if you're 50 or 5 years old. Everybody recognizes what a Camaro is, what a Mustang is. So these are definitely timeless. But again, we have to obviously be understanding of neighbors, residents' enjoyments. Lots on Yonge Street, and I know Councillor Harvey has said it before, and I have some friends in the area. Mapleview Drive West, man, after 9 p.m. on a summer, it's a raceway. So definitely we have to try to find the balance there. Okay, so seeing no further comments from members of committee or council as a whole, I'll just call to vote on the motion as verbalized. Ms. Cook, could you just go over it one last time and then we can do the vote?
Okay, for paragraph 1, it's requesting staff to review what other municipalities have done with respect to blitzes with their police services for noisy mufflers and cars. Number 2 is to work with BPS to see if we can do a joint blitz together. And 3 is to thank Barrie Police Service for conducting the past blitzes and to encourage them to do future blitzes in 2021.
Okay, perfect. So the motion's on the floor as printed. Questions, Deputy Mayor Ward?
Yeah, and just that first one, I mean, it's part of it to capture, make sure we review our current bylaws, make sure they're adequate. They might be adequate. We might not have to do anything, but the idea is to see what they're like now, what other municipalities are doing, and maybe we don't need any changes, but that's what I'm curious to find out.
Okay, perfect.
I don't want to rule out that they're adequate now.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward. I've got one quick question, Ms. Cook. Voluntary compliance, was that captured in what you read? Because I think, especially if and when this gets reported by the media, voluntary compliance versus blitzes has a very different tone to it. A blitz is a blitz, as we've come to know them. Voluntary compliance measures communicate that level of unity and resolution instead of punishment.
Yes, we can include voluntary compliance if the mover of the motion.
Perfect, especially as it's reported. Okay, perfect. And one final question, Ms. Cook. Do we have an email that members of the public can give feedback to, whether problematic areas of sound or people who themselves own cars and want to give feedback on this? Do we have, obviously, the city clerk's office and councilors' emails are always open, but is there anything specific for this moving forward?
My thought on the motion is that staff are just going to do this based on committee's direction and not at this point take any public feedback on it. That was my read of the motion. I just want to make sure that's the intention of the mover.
Okay, perfect. I believe that is the intention. Deputy Mayor.
That is. Can I
you
just add one other thing at the end to report back by the second quarter of 2021? I just think give us time before next summer, if that's an adequate time frame.
Ms. Cook?
Staff will attempt to report back by then, yes.
Perfect. Deputy Mayor Ward, since you removed the motion, do you see any value in either at that time in Q2 of 2021 or now incorporating some sort of community feedback integration into this? We do it for a lot of other projects. We do it for the waterfront. We do it for financing. Again, not just, yes, I support it, no, I don't, but also capturing information such as, hey, I live on this street that hasn't had enforcement.
I think Wendy wants to say something, looks like, first.
Right.
Just remember, going back to what the memo says, is that we cannot enforce moving traffic through our bylaws. So it would more be the police that may want to facilitate any feedback on moving vehicles, not our staff.
Okay, perfect. I see Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Just on that note, I think everybody received an email this morning at 5:30 from Christopher Allport, who's the Sergeant of Traffic. So there's an avenue if there's residents complaining to the councillor that you can inform him on the frequency and street and stuff like. So I think that would be the best avenue, just so they can document it and it's not by direction, it's by complaint, and we're not directing the police.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. So the motion is as printed as Ms. Cook read earlier, with just the adding in of voluntary compliance events Any further questions before I call it to a vote? Okay, all
Oh.
those in favor? Oh, Ms. Cook, go ahead.
I think Ms. McAlpine wanted to jump in quickly.
For sure. Ms. McAlpine, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Morales. I believe Councillor Thompson really covered off a portion of it, but Barrie Police has asked a number of times if members of council are receiving complaints about speeding and or noise, that those be forwarded to their staff with the specific locations where they're occurring, and preferably any times that those are occurring, and that will allow them to target their scarce resources to those areas at the appropriate time. Again, as Ms. Cook has indicated, this is not, municipal law enforcement officers don't have and won't have the power to pull them over. And checking them for decibel levels would only be if they voluntarily allowed us to do that at the time. And typically that requires them to be pulled over first, unless they attend for a voluntary check.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. McAlpine. Emphasis on scarce resources. Okay. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you still have some follow-ups? Go ahead.
Just to make it clear that the report from the staff about our noise bylaw is all directed towards blitzes, a few times a year. It's not towards, having bylaw go around the city or patrol with officers. It's about what other municipalities are doing, as I understand, in Oakville and Burlington and Hamilton and Toronto and Ottawa. They're going out for 2 or 3 times a year doing blitzes, and certainly not going to do it. I know in Ottawa last year they got 300 people in one day, 300 vehicles. So I think if they have a blitz, the police will know where the noisy vehicles are. I'm sure they will, whether it's on Mapleview or the Lakeshore or somewhere like that. If they have a blitz a few times a year, I think that's really what I'm looking for. I'm not looking at a whole different system where bylaw officers are out there responding to noise complaints.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward. Okay. Seeing no further questions, I'll call the motion to question. All those in favor, please indicate. Yes, I am a yes as well. That passes unanimously by those in attendance. Thank you, members of committee. We're now moving on to section 5, the advisory committee reports, and we have 7 of them to be received. Can I have a member of the committee put the following advisory committee reports on the floor to be received? And that would be the report of Town and Gown from January 22nd of this year, as well as February 26th. The report of the Accessibility Committee, February 13th, 2020. International Relations, October 6th, 2020. Accessibility, October 8th, 2020. Senior Advisory Committee, October 26th, 2020. And Town and Gown again, October 28th, 2020. Can I have a member of committee, Councillor Harvey? Perfect. They are on the floor. Any questions on those reports? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate. Perfect, as am I. That passes. We now have a recommendation from the report of the Accessibility Committee from February 13th, 2020, and that would be, give me 1 second here, the City of Barrie Infrastructure Standards Sidewalk Joints, and that is section 1, that staff in the Corporate Asset Management Department incorporate the replacement of tooled joints with saw cut joints into the design of the city sidewalks as part of the City of Barrie's infrastructure standards to enhance accessibility features on city sidewalks. In section 2, the newly built or reconstructed city sidewalks be built to this enhanced infrastructure standard and continue to conform to the applicable Ontario provincial standards and the Accessibility of Ontarians with Disabilities Act, AODA. And right over my head, so I'm just going to go to Councillor Thompson on this to help us out with a bit of feedback on this. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, you actually read the amended motion, so you read it properly. But basically what it is...
Can you translate it to English for all of us?
So on a sidewalk, they have a contractual joint and an expansion. The saw cutting is the contractual, which with the tool joint leaves a little bit of a lip, which can really hurt on people that have accessibility issues with wheelchairs or walkers. So the saw cut's much cleaner and it's actually at no other cost. So it still performs the task, what it's supposed to do with contractual, but it doesn't leave the lip of slurry, which is can be difficult for some people to navigate through.
Perfect. Do you have an amendment to what I read, or that is your recommendation? Okay, perfect. Perfect. So that's on the floor.
Hold on, I think Ms. Cook is shaking her head, but
Ms. Cook. Go ahead, Ms. Cook.
Through you, Councillor Morales to Councillor Thompson. There is a different amendment that staff had forwarded you today. The motion that you, Councillor Morales read was actually the motion that was passed in February. I can read it if you would like.
Councillor Thompson, you have so many great ideas. It's no problem. You can't keep track of them. That's I'll give you. You can definitely check your inbox. But
actually, I was following along when you read it, and it seemed, but it basically the one I was sent for the wording was that the Accessibility Advisory Committee support the following change to the City of Barrie's infrastructure standards. A, replace tool joints with saw cut joints into the design of city sidewalk to enhance accessibility features to the city sidewalk, and newly built and reconstructed city sidewalk to be built to enhance the infrastructure standards and continue to conform to the applicable Ontario provincial standards and the AODA.
Ms. Cook, could you pull up the because that what Councillor Thompson read is essentially more or less what I have. But is there any amendments that you could pull up? The one that you said you.
Oh, it's just essentially adding that the Accessibility Committee supports this initiative. The two paragraphs are essentially the same. We're just adding a provision saying that the Accessibility Committee supports this. So that's it.
Okay. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Thompson?
Yes. If just before you put it on the floor, I just had one question through you, Chair, to Ms. Miller in regards to this moving forward with the accessibility. In Councillor Jim Harris and my ward, probably Deputy Mayor ward as well, the standard of width of sidewalk was about 120, 130. I know that some municipal governments are moving to a 1.8 meter wide sidewalk and standard being 1.5. So I was just wondering if there's any consideration. I know that's a little more of a cost because you're increasing, and when you're doing piecemeal on like a utility cut program or a maintenance, some residents don't want a wide bay of sidewalk, butting up to a narrow bay. But I was just wondering, because our plows are pretty much set at a 150, and that's why we have a lot of sod restoration on deficiency lists come springtime. So I was just wondering if that was something that was going forward. Like I've already seen the implementing the tactile plates, the warning, which is part of the OID. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Ms. Miller.
Through you, Chair Morales, to Councillor Thompson, certainly I could have staff take a look and give you maybe an email response back to the committee. Whenever we have an opportunity to make our sidewalks or anything public infrastructure in the city more accessible, we'll certainly take that opportunity. But you're right that there are sometimes some complicating factors in terms of abutting different standards. But we'll take a look at that and give you an answer back and see if there's anything on the book.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Miller. And that's music to Deputy Mayor Ward's ears. We know how much he loves sidewalks. There we go. You didn't think you'd get away with that with a comment. Okay, so we'll put on the floor. It's on the floor as printed, read earlier with the addition about the support from the Accessibility Committee, Ms. Cook. And Councillor Thompson, it's only appropriate. Do you mind putting it on the floor yourself, even though I read it, there was a bit of confusion? Okay, so it's on the floor by Councillor Thompson. Are there any further questions on this, members of committee? Ms. Kungle, seeing none, I'm going to call to a vote. All those in favor, please indicate. In favor, myself included, that passes unanimously. Perfect on that. And there's no new business on the agenda, so that brings us to our adjournment. This completes the meeting, and I don't need a motion to adjourn the meeting, so I'll call the meeting adjourned at 6:56. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.